Well, my name is Stacy Zimmerman, and I'm a circuit judge for Washington and Madison County. Well, I was born in Amarillo, Texas in 1963. My mom was a school teacher up until she retired, and she was kind of my mentor growing up. We couldn't go anywhere without one of her students coming up to her and saying, "Ms. Zimmerman, I remember you." And so my mom was a school teacher, my dad an optometrist. So my growing up, I spent from about age of 4 until I was about 13 living in New Mexico, in northern New Mexico outside of Santa Fe. And then when I was 13, my mom and dad got divorced and we moved, my brother and my mom and I moved to Amarillo, Texas, where my grandparents lived. And that's where I went on to school, and I graduated from high school at Tascosa High School in Amarillo in 1981.
And talk about getting out of, going through college. It seemed like you did that kind of young.
I did. Growing up through high school, my grandpa was an attorney. My great-grandpa was an attorney. He read the law, my great-grandpa. My grandpa was a lawyer. He went on the GI Bill. So after he fought in World War II, he came home to Amarillo College and got his law degree at SMU. And so third generation lawyer. And so I always liked to argue. I was on the debate team in high school, speech team. And so I just thought, I wanted to go to law school, but I went to Texas Tech and I studied agricultural economics and got my agricultural economics bachelor's degree at age 20. So it took me 2.5 years, so I was pretty fast. And then I went on to get my master's degree in agricultural economics, was accepted to Texas Tech Law School, finished that early, and then really wanted to get my Master's of Law degree. So I came to Fayetteville, never been to Arkansas before, so was accepted to the University of Arkansas Law School, started their Masters of Law program in agricultural law, graduated from that in 1989, I think it was. I was already licensed lawyer from Texas, and I needed maybe some courtroom experience. So my good friend Tanya Tanyahill went to work for the very first juvenile judge, William Story, who was appointed to the bench by then Governor Clinton. And I just started volunteering to represent kids in Judge Story's juvenile court, and I loved it. I fell in love with that. That was back in 1990, maybe 91, 92, somewhere in there. And approached Terry Jones, who was the then elected prosecutor for Washington County, about wanting to be a part-time prosecutor but just handle juvenile court. And I just loved it, and that's how I decided I love juvenile court.
Do you think maybe your mother being a teacher may have done something?
I think so, because my mom was a teacher. She was very, very active in our community. Kids would come to her with problems. She loved children, and I think I grew up in that wanting to serve and wanting to help kids. So I think that did come from my mom.
Let's talk about first, let's get you on the bench.
Okay.
You ran?
So I ran against the then sitting judge. That was in 1998. The election was in November of 1998. And I ran against the sitting juvenile judge. Mary Ann Gunn ran for a newly created division, the 6th division. And she and I were both elected in November of 1998 as the first women to be elected in the northern part of our state as a circuit judge, that's a huge thing. Because you would think 1998 is not that long ago. Up until then, there had not been a female circuit judge in Northwest Arkansas or the northern part of the state.
And now?
And now, it's very exciting because the majority of the circuit judges in Washington, Madison County are women. There are 7 of us, and I'm the senior judge as far as being on the bench the longest for circuit judge. So, and then after I was elected, Judge Gunn retired, and then we have Judge Joanna Taylor, who had been formerly a municipal judge, district judge in Huntsville. We have Judge Joanna Taylor. We have Judge Beth Story Bryan, which interestingly enough, she's the daughter of Judge Bill Story. We have Christy Beaumont, and we have me. That's 4 out of 7. So that's very exciting to go from 1998, when Mary Ann Gunn and I were the first women judges elected in northwest Arkansas, to now we have a majority of female judges in our county, in our district.
Are there other districts in the state that have a majority of women on the bench?
You know, I don't know. There are a lot more lady judges than there used to be. So I can get you the figures on that, because I'm just very excited about how many women judges we have in the state. It's very exciting. Competent lady judges. And let me just say, when I ran for judge in 1998, I was 35 years old. So I was hitting the campaign trail at age 34. I had just had a baby, so I had my baby on my hip, and I would go out in the community to everything, and I had some older men that come up to me and they'd say, honey, you're just too young and pretty, you're not going to be mean enough to be a judge. So I still was hearing that in 1998, which is pretty amazing. And Judge Thomas Butt, was the senior judge in our district at that point in time, and he was so excited to have, he swore Mary Ann Gunn in and swore me in our judges' robing ceremony in January of 1999.
Talk about what kind of a caseload you inherited.
So I was the prosecutor in juvenile court for 7.5, 8 years, leading up to taking the bench. So a lot of cases, and with our growing population, our caseload has continued. And what people forget is that if you are an adult and you commit a misdemeanor allegedly shoplifting in Prairie Grove or Springdale or Fayetteville, and you're an adult, you go to what's called now the district court, like it was municipal court back then. So there would be Prairie Grove district court, Springdale, Fayetteville, Johnson, Elkins. They're like, I don't know, 9. Plus, if you commit a felony and you're an adult, you go see Judge Taylor, Judge Lindsay, and if you get into drug court, you see Judge Beaumont. So that's 11 different courts. If you're a juvenile and you have a misdemeanor or a felony, you don't go to those little courts all around, you all come here. That's a lot of cases. And what we try to do, unlike some other grown-up courts, we try to divert kids that make a bad choice and maybe they have a ticket. It's the first time they've been in trouble. We get them through our teen court. We get them through some of our other programs we've created to get kids out of trouble. They do well. They never actually get a court case filed on them, but they come to our staff, and our staff works with the kid and the family. So in addition to the number of actual cases filed, we have all those tickets that kids are getting for non-traffic, non-wildlife, game and fish. They come here, so we have all those citations in addition to our actual cases that are filed. And it's just skyrocketed, our population and the numbers of families that we're dealing with.
One of the things I've heard about you, Judge Zimmerman, is that recently you have been super busy because of the caseload, and they are now actually bringing in a new judge. So explain how that will eliminate some of your caseload, and I think as the administrative judge you get to divvy those cases up, right?
So about 2 or 3 years ago, there was some talk about and we're in the 4th Judicial District, which our district is Washington, Madison County. So about 3 or 4 years ago, we were talking about we need another judge. How do we go about doing that? And I'm still the administrative judge, and so I put together some figures. And then last year I went down to the JRAC and presented to why we needed another judge. JRAC made recommendations to the state legislature, and the legislature passed it in April of this year. So we will now have an 8th judge. And one of the pushes were the figures for juvenile court. We needed another judge to take a significant amount of juvenile cases. And all of us circuit judges then signed off on an administrative plan, and I sent it off to the Supreme Court for approval, and that would be the 8th judge would take 50% of the juvenile docket. This division, the Division 3, which currently hears 100% of the juvenile docket, will take 50%. Each of these 2 divisions will also take 10% of the domestic relations cases, divorce, paternity cases, protective orders, which we routinely hear on a companion basis right now. So if you have a divorce and we also have a kid in foster care, this division hears both of those sometimes. So that will really help our numbers. We're spending 12, 13 hours in court a day because this division hears 100% of the juvenile cases and will until the new judge is elected and takes the bench January 1st, 2021.
12, 13 hours, you mentioned, and not just your staff when I was trying to schedule, but other judges have said, this judge is busy.
I am busy, and I'm in the courtroom. I'm talking hearing cases, hearing witnesses, and the kinds of cases juvenile division hears are delinquency cases. That's the criminal case. When a kid has been arrested or received a citation for a crime, that's a delinquent act. They come here throughout Washington and Madison County. I also hear family in need of services cases. Those are the truancy cases, which the school is mandated to turn over to the prosecutor, and then the prosecutor decides whether or not to file them. Just like they turn over the police reports, and then the prosecutor decides to file or not a petition. Then I hear some of the hardest cases are the ones when children are in foster care. And so those are dependency neglect cases. I have all of the children that are in foster care for Washington and Madison County, and that's about 300 kids. And so those cases don't just get over in 1 year. We try to get the kids back to the family if the child will be safe. Sometimes those children don't go back to family for various reasons, and they may linger in foster care for more than a year or two. I have some kids that have closed head injuries, parents didn't want them, and they've been in foster care for 7 years. In our delinquency cases, sometimes those cases overlap with our foster care cases. They might be in foster care. So a lot of these cases, it's not like you go to a court and you're going to get a quick hearing and that's it. It goes away. These foster care cases sometimes last more than a year.
Let's talk first about facilities. When you first started,
when I first started,
were you and how did you end up here? It's kind of a change.
It is a big change. So when I took the bench in 1999, Juvenile Court was part of the old Mountain Inn. So that beautiful mural of the owl, back in 1999, Juvenile Court was where the eye of the owl was. We were up on that third floor. Cramped, little bitty place. And then Judge Jerry Hunton, approached me a couple of years later and he said, we really need a bigger juvenile detention center. At that time, the kids were housed in an old home next to the main courthouse down there. And it was an old house. And so Judge Hunton rallied the quorum court, and that's when they approved to build the current JDC and the courts building all together. Because up until then, kids were being put in a van and driven to the front of the old Mountain Inn. They got out, they had to go across the street there, go up, and it was very dangerous for the kids. It took a lot for the officers to have to do this every day, the County Sheriff's Department. And so Judge Hunton broke ground on this, and we've been here 21 years now in this building, which houses all the juvenile officers. So unlike the other judges who don't have their probation officers, they're not the boss of the probation officers. Juvenile judges are the boss of diversion officers, FINS officers, probation officers. We have a staff of about 20. So we're here with the juvenile court, and we have a door that connects our courtroom with JDC. So the kids that are in lockup at JDC just come through the little door into the courtroom, and there we are. So the kids are safe, society is safe, we don't have all this transporting situation. So we've been here about 21 years, and for the last 6 years we've really struggling with space and limitations there, and we're looking at what are we going to do next.
There's been a move over the years to start doing the, arraignments or first appearances, bringing judges down so they don't have to.
Right.
Talk about how, as the administrative judge, how y'all have tried to make that where they don't have to transport as much.
So we're talking adult defendants, and they're at the Washington County Jail. So the way we handle it is there are 5 district judges. There's Judge Story, who's with Fayetteville, in the Fayetteville area. Then we have Casey Jones. He's the 2nd district judge. He handles Fayetteville, Elkins. I can't remember which district courts he has. Judge Harper handles Springdale and I believe Johnson or Elm Springs. Then we have Graham Nations, who's out in Prairie Grove and Lincoln. And then we also have Dale Ramsey, who handles the district court for Madison County and Carroll County. So those are 5 judges. And there's a rotation where they actually come to the Washington County Jail, and then the circuit judges will rotate in. And those judges will go down to the little bitty courtroom that's in the Washington County Jail and have first appearance and first arraignments. And so that's to cut down on the traveling of having them be toted to their arraignment. And then in juvenile court, if we have a parent who's in the penitentiary, we have a video or a go-to meeting where we have them. If it's a serious trial and the parent wants to be present, then the sheriff has to bring them to court and we bring them. But we try to do the video, have the person in the courtroom by video, as well as the other courts really try hard to do that because it's the sheriff's department is transporting a lot of people. So we're working on that, and I think we're making some really good strides on that as well.
Thank you, Judge. We talked about facilities. Let's talk about prosecutors. You were one, but since who else has been?
Well, let's see. Before I started being the prosecutor in 90 or 91, it was pretty much a revolving door as far as prosecutors in juvenile court, talking deputy prosecutors. And when I started as deputy prosecutor, John Threet was a deputy prosecutor. We started kind of at the same time. He was a full-time prosecutor. I was a part-time prosecutor doing juvenile court. And since that time, and since I took the bench, we've had, as far as elected prosecutors, we've had, when I took the bench, it was Terry Jones. Before that, it was Andrew Zeiser. After Terry Jones was John Threet, who's now a circuit judge, and then Matt Durrett is the current elected prosecutor for both Washington and Madison counties.
Well, who actually is the juvenile prosecutor?
Well, the actual
somebody,
that would be the elected official would then hire someone, and then they would be assigned to juvenile court. So since I've been juvenile judge, there have been several prosecutors over the last 20-something years. Currently, we have Eli Bentley and Sarah Ashley, and they do a great job. And as far as the public defender, ever since I've been in the area, Denny Heislip has always been the head of the public defender. I think actually Jerry Paddock was the head, and then Denny Heislip. And we've had really 2 public defenders in all the years that I've done it that really stuck with it. Was Sue Ann Jeffus, did a great job, and she retired. And now we have Paul Teufel with the public defender. He does a great job. Mr. Teufel, the public defender, probably has a caseload of about, I would guess, 600 cases. And Eli Bentley, who handles the delinquency cases, he has about that as well. 1 prosecutor, 1 public defender on those criminal cases. And then Sarah Ashley handles the FINS cases. We have about, 250, maybe 300 open family need of services cases. So that's a big caseload when you're talking about you have a trial just like in adult court. The prosecutor has to be ready to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. And we set cases very quickly in juvenile court trials. Same thing with the public defender. They have to be ready to go. And if you have 600 clients, it's kind of rough, but they do a great job. I don't know how they do it. They're great. We've always had great sheriffs. And back in the day, when I was a private practicing attorney and also was a prosecutor, we had Ralph Baker, who was the sheriff in Madison County, and then Steve Treat, and then Sheriff Morgan, and those are the ones we primarily worked with.
You mentioned earlier campaigning, and someone said you were too young and be nice to the kids,
yes,
or whatever. Some accounts, I don't know if they're true, have said that maybe you are kind of hard on kids.
I kind of look at juvenile court as kind of from a parent perspective, that if we tell kids these are the rules and these are the consequences, and we do not have follow through, we've done the kids a disservice. And the kids know I'm tough, but I'm fair. And not everybody's going to agree with the judge's decision. You know, when you're a judge, one side's going to be mad with you, the other side may be happy, or both of them will be unhappy. I mean, there's going to be a winner, there's going to be a loser. So part of that just comes with being a judge. But what's interesting, when I took the bench January 1st, 1999, all of those kids who came before me, I had just been their prosecutor, right? So they come to see me and I say, look, Johnny, I was the prosecutor on your case. Mom and Dad, you know I was the prosecutor. If you want a different judge, I will not take offense. I will give a different judge. I will assign this to a different judge. And out of about 700 cases, I think I had 10 that the kid or the parent wanted a different judge on. That tells me that the kids know that I'm fair. I might rule and they're not happy with me, but I tried to hold people accountable and also hold the parent accountable. So if I order the kid to do something, I order the parents to do something, and the parents totally blow off my court order, we're going to have a hearing on the parents to see if, well, maybe the parents should be held accountable too. They're the parents, they're the adult, and if I've ordered the parents to do certain things and they haven't, why should I expect their child to follow my court orders? So I follow the law to the best of my ability. I try to be fair, follow the law, but there's going to be follow through. And that's just like what a good parent or a good teacher does.
When I interviewed Terry Jones,
yes,
he said that you had done a great job as prosecutor, and that toward the end, when he realized you were going to run against the sitting judge and might well win, that he had you kind of do like a swap deal.
He did. First he said I was fired, and he fired me.
Oh, he didn't
tell you that. And so once I got a letter slipped under my door that I was fired because I announced I was running against the sitting judge. And here I was, a female, age 34, had just given birth, and I was told, you're 7.5 years of prosecuting, you're done, you're finished. And it was a contract. He could fire me at any time. I visited with a good friend of mine, Tom Mars, an attorney, and we had a little chat with Terry Jones. And so then it was put out that I could just switch with the deputy prosecutor, and that prosecutor could come here and I could go to juvenile court up in Benton County. And he asked, would you be willing to do that? I said, well, sure, I need a job. I mean, I'm running for office. Don't take away my livelihood because I'm exercising my constitutional right to run for public office. So that's what happened. And I switched and I went to Benton County, and Judge Jay Finch was the juvenile judge. And I practiced up there until I went full-time on my campaign. And then I said, you know, I've got to focus on my campaign, and then it all turned out.
When you ran against the sitting judge, have you been challenged since?
Yes, so that race in 1998 was, like I said, Mary Ann Gunn and I were the first female judges elected in Northwest Arkansas. And even Judge Butt couldn't remember an incumbent having been beaten in the last 40 years. So here I was, a young female, winning against the sitting judge. And so from there, when that term was a 4-year term. So our juvenile court was 4 years, and it became 6, and it also became a circuit, just a circuit judge position. I didn't have opponents for like the first 3 elections, I think, and then I had an opponent 5 years ago, and obviously was successful. So the campaign trail is grueling. It's very grueling when you have a baby on your hip, and then as a single mom, I was juvenile judge for 12 years as a single mom. That kind of made it kind of interesting. And so, yeah, it was tough.
You know, elections are obviously partisan still. And
that's right.
Is the county and the courts, are they run partisan? I mean, I know you may have to abide to that with.
Well,
or do you feel like that kind of goes away once?
Judges' elections are now nonpartisan.
Now
nonpartisan. You're not affiliated with a political party. And even back in the day when they were, you had to run as a political party. You still should follow the law. What does the law say? And apply the facts of the case. So to me, there should be no partisan issue, you follow the law as a judge, you apply the facts of the case as you hear them, you make your rulings, and if the Court of Appeals doesn't agree with you, they reverse you. The Supreme Court doesn't agree with you, they reverse you. So there's a higher court to also review cases that are meritorious of appeal.
Let me ask this. What is something maybe that most people or some people misunderstand, or maybe they don't really understand about juvenile court?
Well, I'm very passionate about juvenile court, so when I think about what do people not know about juvenile court? Well, first of all, they don't know about juvenile court that if you are arrested or you're given a citation in all our little towns all around, even if you don't get arrested, you come to one court. People don't realize that. And so the second thing people don't realize about juvenile court is there's a real balancing act, unlike in adult court. In adult court, and you have a criminal case, the judge looks at the evidence. If you're guilty, the jury finds you guilty, this is what you get. In juvenile court, not only do the rules of evidence apply, but also the judge needs to look at what's in the child's best interest. So you have a lot more creativity to get help for that kid and that family, because you're not only dealing with the kid, but the family, the mom and dad or the custodian, they're part of the case, unlike the adult system where it's just the defendant. And people don't realize that. So maybe Johnny is using marijuana, or he's doing this and he's stealing cars. Well, dad's out there stealing cars with him, or there's some family issues that you don't know about. So if you're in adult court, you don't deal with the family. In juvenile court, you do, which I like it, because if you can get help for the whole family, the kid is going to be more successful and hopefully never end up in prison or in trouble.
You mentioned the kid in trouble in the family. Is that a common link?
It is a common link. Then when I go and I speak to a lot of groups, I speak to parents, I speak to kids in schools, teachers. When we speak to people, I say, how do you keep your kid out of trouble? How do you keep them out of juvenile court? Three things. Three things that cause you to come see Judge Zimmerman. One is you're not going to school. Truancy, it's not flashy, it's not exciting, but if a kid's not in school, they're going to be getting into trouble. Right, Colin? Yes. Secondly, if you have substance abuse issues, that's a huge thing. And the third thing is parenting. And people want to say, oh, Johnny's into trouble because his mom is a single mom, or Johnny's into trouble because of this is his color. No, it's across the board. If parents aren't being the parent, being consistent, spending time with their kids, and parenting effectively, that's one of the three reasons that might cause your kid to come into juvenile court. So those are things that people don't think about, but when you talk to them about it, they're like, yeah, I could see how that could be. So I could sit here, Scott, and talk for hours about juvenile justice and juvenile court, because it's really a passion. So about 2013, I was talking to a judge from out of state, and they were following what's called Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative, JDAI. And this is a nationwide thing. And it's to keep kids out of lockup that don't need to be there. Not the kids that are violent and they're a threat to society. I'm talking about kids that don't need to be in our lockup. And so in 2013, we started JDAI in Washington County, and Judge Smith and Benton County started. We're the first two in the state. And so we have the data to show the number of kids that we lock up or send to Division of Youth Services, which is the great big JDC down by Little Rock, for our population is pretty low. I still send kids to DYS. I still lock up kids at JDC, but we really try to screen out who are we locking up, what kind of services do they need, before we just lock up kids. And I'm a strong person, I'm gonna lock you up if you need to be. So that's something that I think people need to know about. So we're trying to find alternatives for kids. We also have our evening reporting center downtown Springdale. We noticed that we had medium to high risk kids located in Springdale. We were having a lot of gang violence. And in JDAI, we went to Santa Cruz, California. They had an evening reporting center there. And my staff and I said, that will help us in Northwest Arkansas. We replicated it. We got the Jones Trust to give us a building for free for the first year. And within a year, we were getting an award by Mutual of America for one of the top programs in the country, the Station, we call it, on Emma Street. The Station has Teen Action Support Center. You'll do community service. You'll do robotics, maybe with the robotics team. We have our evening reporting center probation officers that do it after school, and they'll take your kid back home that evening after they've done their homework. They have mentoring. They have all these things going on for our medium to high risk kids to keep them off the street, to keep me from having to send them to DYS. Our evening reporting center in the Station on Emma Street has been going strong now for 2 years. Our numbers show that it works. We also have expanded our diversion programs. We have a venturing crew program. We call it 885. The kids named it. That's 885 Clydesdale. That's our address, 885 Venturing Crew. It's like Boy Scouts, and we have boys and girls. We take them out. We do zip lining. We do team building. We're talking about gang guys that may be rival gangs. They're in it. They're doing great. We've had great success in our diversion programs, and I've been expanding those over the last 20 years. People don't know about that. We have our teen court, which I don't know if you know about teen court. You need to talk to Scott Gage. He's been doing it for over 20 years. And we have an attorney that fills in. We do that one night a week, or one night a month, excuse me. And so you learn here, and we have it here in Washington County. That's our Washington County Teen Court. We love it. And the number of kids that go through teen court, it's a very small percentage of them that get in trouble again with court. We love teen court. That's another diversion program. We also have our girls group where we rotate girls in with a counselor. They sit down with other girls that are having these same problems. We do it at our Station, which is our evening reporting center on Emma Street, and we get them through there. I mean, we have a Girl Scout program for our girls. So we're really trying to get them hooked in with the community in positive ways. When I see a kid that we weren't able to reach and they've gone on to the penitentiary, it breaks my heart. I have a lot of kids. I'll show you an example. It's kind of like my mom. I had a kid, I locked her up. She's doing meth. She had a minor misdemeanor, but she had a bad meth problem. I kept her in lockup for a week or two until we could get her into inpatient drug treatment. She finished it. She went on probation. She did fine, never knew what happened to her. I was at Sonic a couple years ago getting my food, and a young lady comes out and she says, "Are you Judge Zimmerman?" And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I'm not remembering this young lady. And I said, well, yes, I am. And I thought, oh, she might throw her food at me. She didn't. She said, and she told me her name. She said, you locked me up. I was doing meth. You got me into treatment. You saved my life. I am the manager of this store. I'm doing great. I have a little boy. I'm clean and sober. You changed it for me. Now that's why people should be juvenile judges. If you have the passion and your whole life's work is to help kids and families, not everybody's going to agree with you. You're going to make people mad. You're going to get reversed on occasion from the Court of Appeals. But in your heart, you're doing the best you can to help kids. That's what it's all about.
What about Jeannie Mack?
Oh, I love Jeannie Mack. Jeannie Mack, who is Jeannie Mack? Jeannie Mack is the director of our Washington County JDC. And back when I was a young lawyer and I was the deputy prosecutor, Jeannie Mack was the assistant deputy director of Juvenile Detention Center. Back when it was in the fallen down house on College. Then we built this building. Randall Everett went into retirement, and Jeannie Mack became our director. She has programs for kids at JDC. They have 2 Fayetteville teachers. The kids that are in JDC get their education. They get counseling. They get someone to talk to. They have different programs they can do at JDC. She's great. So who is Jeannie Mack? She's a hero in my book. And she's retiring. So maybe I'll have to be in therapy now because she's retiring.
Who's going to replace her?
I have no idea. I'm sure they'll do a great job, but you can't replace Jeannie Mack.
Anything else you can think of before I get down to my last couple of questions?
Well, you know, when people ask me, why do you do what you do? I mean, there are nights that I go home and I just cry. You know, I have children that have been raped by their parents and they're in foster care. I've had cases where siblings have been murdered by their parents or killed by their parents. I have had cases, and I still have cases, where babies are born on meth, and they have all these different health problems. Those are the ones that I take home with me. My son was about 3 years old, and I had a little girl that was about his age, and she had been scalded in water. in a bathtub. So every time I gave my baby a bath, I'd think about that case. And it was really hard. So some days are just, you just want to go home and cry. And so I have to focus on the victories, and the victories are when a child who's returned to their parents and the parents are now doing great, they're not using substances, they're going to be a safe place for their kid and they get their kid back. Or a child who can never return home to their parents because their parents were raping them or physically abusing them, and they get adopted for a forever home. Or I have a kid who really had a bad meth problem and now they're a manager of a store and they're doing great. So I would say that it's an important job, it's a hard job, but the day that I don't have a passion for it is the day I need to retire. And I'm very passionate about what I do.
If someone came to you, let's say an old friend from New Mexico or Texas, and said, Stacy, tell me about Washington County. Not the courts, but what's the county like? What would you tell them?
So when my friends ask me about Washington County, especially when I first moved here in 1987, I would tell my friends I was moving to Arkansas, and those Texans would say, well, why would you want to go there? It's a bunch of hillbillies. You know, the connotation of Arkansas wasn't so good back then. And I'd say, no, you don't know. Washington County is fabulous. Arkansas is fabulous. We have our good, we have our bad. Fayetteville, Springdale, Northwest Arkansas, it's a fabulous place to live and raise your family. I go out and I kayak, and my son is a big outdoorsman. My son, who had a juvenile judge as his mom, and for 12 years it was just the two of us, single mom, and he's now at the U of A. He's right now doing an internship in Alaska, you know, and his love of the outdoors is because he was raised here in Northwest Arkansas. The people are great, the economy's great. So when my friends ask me about Washington County, I say, I love where I live, and I'm blessed that every day I wake up, I think, gosh, I get to live in this great place.
How would you finish this sentence? Sort of like what we just talked about. My favorite thing about Washington County is...
My favorite thing about Washington County is the diversity of our people in Washington County. We have all sorts of people speaking all sorts of languages from all sorts of places, and my staff is diverse, our community is diverse, and our people of Washington County are a diverse, wonderful group of people.